What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I am Roberto Rojas, and joining me as always are my great co-hosts, Federico Perez, Maria Britos, and Ralph Hanna. And guys, we are right into the league action. We had mentioned a lot about the international break with Paraguay, talking about the World Cup qualifiers and the Copa America, but now we are shifting gears to what's going on in the league action. The Clausura is starting. Obviously, we're talking right now on the day that Cerro Porteño and Luqueño are kicking off right now. But obviously, we have a lot to talk about. We made our predictions. If you have not gone into our Twitter account at Guarani Vision, all four of us have made our predictions for this upcoming Clausura season. Obviously, we have Libertadores and Sudamericana to talk about between our Paraguayan teams. So I'm really excited to get into this conversation. Let's get this show on the road. Let's go all the way to the motherland first to Federico Perez, who we should say is half vaccinated Federico Perez right now. But how are you, my friend?
I'm halfway there. Hi, Roberto. Hi, Maria. Hi, Rob. Hi to everyone. I'm so happy to be back here with all of you guys. I'm so sorry I wasn't able to join you guys on the last episode. I've been just so busy with so many games over here in Paraguay. We got all the leagues going on, even though, the top division, just like Roberto said, is coming back this weekend, halfway in July. But yeah, I'm happy about the vaccines. Obviously, a lot of people getting vaccinated here in Paraguay in these last couple of weeks with the American vaccines. I got the Pfizer myself, so looking forward in the next couple of weeks to completing my cycle and being able to go back to the stadiums to try to have a normal life again in some kind of way. I'm so happy about that also. I know you guys did a wrap-up show of the Conmebol Copa America, obviously talked about what happened with our national team's performance. I was happy to hear about that. I am yet to fall in love with our coach's decisions, right? After what we saw from Paraguay in this Copa America that was played in Brazil, but I just hope he learned some lessons and we can come back stronger in September, just closing that chapter and moving on, obviously, and everything that's going to happen in this month of July. A very intense week it was. And waiting for the Paraguayan League to come back. We had, just like Roberto said, Libertadores games. We had Sudamericana with Libertad also getting the big win this week because Olimpia couldn't do it at home because Cerro Porteño lost against Fluminense also. So I'm kind of worried about the Paraguayan teams and what I'm seeing from them in this Libertadores. I mean, they look like they don't have the level to take the trophy, but they can still fight it. I mean, you see Olimpia 0-0 against Inter, and Inter looks beatable. I'm not going to say the same thing about Fluminense, but I don't think we're going to talk much about the game itself. I think we're going to talk more about the refs and what happened with the VAR situation and then everything that was left behind after that match, and especially after that specific play where Cerro Porteño could have taken the lead early in the game. Well, obviously, talk about the awesome win in Colombia by Libertad against Junior from Barranquilla. This Libertad side that just looks stronger and stronger, especially with the players that they got. You guys were talking about some of them on the last episode too. So now we saw the games. Now we saw what our Paraguayan teams are made out, and we can kind of imagine also what the rematch is going to be like next week when they play again for the important games, right? Just to see if we can get them out of the 16 round of 16 and into the best teams of the South American football in Sudamericana and Libertadores. That's what we want to see our Paraguayan team. How's everybody doing?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And obviously we're happy for you that you've joined Team Pfizer, as all of us have joined us here on Guarani Vision. Obviously, this isn't a sponsorship or anything, but it's just a pure coincidence, that's for sure. Let's go all the way to South Beach to Miami, and let's go to the blue and white part of Miami from what I'm seeing from Maria Britos. I mean, look at you. I mean, certainly you have your teams and obviously you support a team that wears black and white, but you're supporting the team from Villarrica. What is going on here? But how are you, Maria?
Hey guys, how's it going? Yeah, I'm repping Guareña this time. I said it in my preview, in my prediction earlier today that I think they were such a fun team to watch, and we all fell in love with them. So, I thought, why not, represent them and give them a little bit of love. But yeah, I hope, like I said, if you guys haven't seen the predictions, I said that I think they probably have a good chance of getting to the third place of the Clausura. That's just my take, and I feel it's a little biased, but that's fine. But other than that, I'm very excited for this Clausura. I can't believe that we're already half into the year. And I'm excited to see what the clubs can give us this time around. We got the surprises last time with Guarani and Olimpia not winning and Libertad taking on the trophy. So I don't know. I think that this time around it's going to be even more fun because not only that, but we're going to have fans according to the AFP. So hopefully, everyone's getting vaccinated in Paraguay. So that's a great sign. I'm happy for you guys. Happy for you, Fede. A lot of my family too is getting vaccinated. Thank goodness. So if it does happen, the fans can go into the stadium. That's just going to make it so much better and so much more fun, which is what we love. Part of what we love in the game of soccer. But how's it going? How's Ralph doing?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, Ralph, we'll get to you in a bit, but I agree, Maria. I think certainly, Paraguay has kind of missed that kind of fan atmosphere that we haven't seen in years now, actually 2 years. Let's go with that. But now with people getting vaccinated and now obviously with the APF trying to open up these kind of rules to allow fans to come back at a small capacity, but I think it shows that there is a shining light at the end of the tunnel, and certainly for what Ralph is going to go on here, I think for a league season that hopefully that we can see a repeat of what we saw last time around. Obviously, we saw a great race with, like you said, Guarani getting in that race, Nacional as well, but Libertad getting it very late on. I think we hopefully can see such a different, or at least a similar kind of race this time around. But I think it all depends on what these teams do, and obviously not just the Libertadores and Sudamericana, but also what's going on in the Copa Paraguays. A lot of these teams are really playing a lot of competition during this time with the Clausura starting.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think I echo all of your guys' thoughts. So this is very positive time for Paraguay. Like we've spoken a lot on the show sometimes about how difficult it's been for a long time now. We talked about it, I think, when the Women's League came back, when Intermedia came back. And now we've got the Clausura. We've actually got youth football is starting again. So, under 20s, under 17s haven't been playing all this time. That's going to get underway. The Copa Paraguay that you mentioned, Roberto, that starts on the 27th of July. They just confirmed during this week. And that's a great tournament, I think, because that brings teams from all over the country. Sometimes Primera gets a bit centralized, but this is really, they're from everywhere. And because there's no fans, you're going to have the big teams going to stadiums they've never been to before, because usually because of security, they wouldn't allow it. But you're going to have like Cerro Porteño is going to play Benjamín-Aceval, which is, they've never been in over 100 years of history to that stadium. So we got some cool stories.
And where is that, by the way? Where is that, by the way? Just to let our viewers know.
Oh, I have to throw it to Fede. I don't know. Benjamín-Aceval is in the east, maybe, I think.
I'm going to have to look it up. I know it's pretty far away. I know it is pretty far away.
I think it's going east rather than west of the Chaco, but we'll check that out and we'll put it on Twitter. And then about the fans, I think, the CONMEBOL have allowed this they have this protocol in place of safe return to stadiums, which would allow eventually also in Sudamericana and Libertadores, but it depends on each country's health ministry. And so today, the Paraguayan Health Ministry said they back the idea of the APF, which is to have like some pilot programs in week 2 and 3 of the Clausura, where they'll try it out in a few games, limited capacity. But it means as soon as next week, we might even be seeing some fans, a small group, back into stadiums. So, things are looking good. And hopefully by the end of the season, towards the end of the Clausura, will be, these games, if they're not full capacity, but you'll at least have fans in every game. So that will be, amazing to be back at that level. And I think it's going to make this tournament much more exciting.
Absolutely. After everything that's been going through over the last year or so, not just here in Paraguay, but also around the world, the fact that now we're seeing people vaccinated, obviously, Ralph, Maria, and I get that kind of now used to, people going to games now in the United States. We saw it in the Euros as well. Um, fans coming back. So it's all about what's going to go in South America right now. So I think it's a good sign. It's good progress, and hopefully that the Paraguayan health ministry and the government and obviously the people are able to demonstrate why they should be back at games and obviously create a good atmosphere for what is going to be a heated season and what's more to come next year. But obviously, let's focus on what's going on this year and let's go straight up to what we're talking about in the international competitions. We saw three of our Paraguayan teams participate in the Copa Libertadores and the Copa Sudamericana. We're going to go in order to what we saw on Tuesday, where Cerro Porteño took on Fluminense at La Nueva Olla. And it was a game marred with so much controversy, a 2-0 loss. And, I think obviously the big talking point that we saw over the last few days was the offside call on Mauro Baseli's goal, where apparently the Fluminense player was indeed right there next to the Cerro players. And, for some reason it was given offside. And, there had been some controversy now, given obviously what we saw on Twitter. We saw also a protest be given the other day outside the CONMEBOL headquarters asking for the expulsion of not just Alejandro Dominguez, the president of CONMEBOL, but also the referee. We did see the VAR referees actually get suspended for that game, from that game, and from officiating in future matches. And Cerro Porteño have also sent in a note given, asking CONMEBOL, because of what had been going on in that game, to avoid it and play it again. Fede, obviously you have a better aspect of what's going on. Aside from what we saw, obviously off the pitch, it was just not the right performance from Cerro Porteño. It was not the right performance for Chiqui Arce's side, who, had a huge challenge now of players missing, now have to tackle this season heading into the Clausura. But, what we saw maybe does not paint a big picture of what we might see in the Clausura. What did you think of what Cedro was able to demonstrate against Fluminense?
No, I really didn't like what I saw from Cerro Porteño, especially in those first minutes. The team just didn't work from the strategy point of view, from what the coach, I think, kind of tried to put from the start of the game. It just didn't work out. He had to change it 30 minutes in because Fluminense was looking a lot better. They were getting more opportunities in front of the goal, and Gian was the big player for Cerro Porteño in those first minutes. And we're talking about the goalkeeper, the Brazilian goalkeeper that has been so important for Cerro Porteño this year, ever since he came in the team. And he was really the hero in those first minutes for Cerro Porteño not to be losing the match. Then it got kind of balanced after Cerro Porteño did a couple of adjustments, especially in that midfield where we saw for the first time the Colombian Rafael Carrascal. And he really didn't work out there next to Matias Villasanti. Obviously, we talked about this so many times. Cerro Porteño probably has one of the best midfields here in Paraguay. And unfortunately, they couldn't count with Pica Lucena, Ángel Cardoso Lucena, who was playing for the national team during the Copa America. He got injured there. He wasn't able to play the last match. Well, we only saw him 45 minutes against Peru. He didn't come in the second half, and since then he hasn't been 100%. So when he came back to Cerro Porteño, it kind of changed Chiqui Arce's, the Cerro Porteño's head coach's plan for this game, and he had to put in Carrascal right away. And Carrascal was just not feeling it with the rest of the team. He wasn't as aggressive as Lucena usually is to get the ball back. He is very talented. Obviously, I do think his skill is with the ball. I think he can make the team play. But, the players around him are going to try to understand him. And that takes some time, I believe, especially when you're not from the same place like Carrascal. He comes from another football. It's his first time outside of Colombia, so he has to make some adjustments also to the team that he's going to play in now. And Cerro Porteño had this big match with almost no preview, with no important games, with no official games right before playing against a Brazilian team that was playing in Brazil during the Copa America. They had the rhythm, and I kind of think that showed during the whole match. And then we're going to talk about the rest. Then we can talk about what happened with VAR. But I think Cerro Porteño was just not up to the level. Was just not up to the challenge, and we didn't see the best out of some players. I mean, I didn't like what I saw from Robert Morales, which was a very good striker during the first half of the year. He didn't get many chances. I mean, he was sacrificed in midfield for what I was saying, for the formation that Chiqui Arce threw at us at the beginning of the game, and that didn't work out. That 4-2. 3-1, it didn't work out seriously, and when Robert Morales was playing in the box next to Boselli, that's where we saw the best from Cerro Porteño. I hope they learn from that, and I hope they can still fight this, but it's a 2-0. You didn't score at home. The away goals might be just too much for them.
It was a very tough game for a team that doesn't score many goals. Cerro Porteño, if we remember, only scored 4 goals in the group stage. That was the least of any of the qualifiers for the last 16. And then they had probably 2 chances in that game, both to Boselli. Boselli had a really good header that was saved by the goalkeeper. And then there's the goal that was ruled out that Roberto talked about, the very controversial VAR goal. And both those chances came in the time that Fede's talking about, when they switched up a little bit and Carrascal was getting into the game more and creating more, because Claudio Aquino wasn't offering what I think Cerro needed in that game. He was also, struggling in his position as kind of on the left but trying to cut in. It just wasn't working for him. So when they switched things up a bit and you had Morales and Boselli together, Carrascal a bit freer, then they made some of those chances at the end of the second half. Going into halftime at 0-0, you thought, okay, maybe this can continue. But what happens is, with Carrascal playing maybe a bit higher up, he gets caught out. If you watch back on that first goal, there's kind of a counter-attack, and he totally loses basically his bearings and the man, and when the ball falls back to Nene, who was like hanging on the edge of the box, that's where you needed your holding midfielder to be, and Villasanti had already gone and closed down. So you think, if there had been Lucena, maybe he would have been more aware to it, because he's a bit better defensively. And once with that goal, and I think coming after the whole VAR controversy, I think Cerro were kind of a bit heads down. It's a really tough task to go back to Brazil, and to Fede's point, Fluminense have been playing. They played 13 games in that space that Cerro didn't play any games. So that kind of rhythm and help, it cost them a bit, by the way. I mean, they were missing a couple of players through injury, including Bobadilla, the Paraguayan striker, but also Fred, who scored 4 goals for them in the group stages. So, a very important player, even though he's getting on a bit now. I think he's 38, 39. They're missing them because they got injured in these games. But then, they do have that kind of rhythm and that team play that I think, Cerro was sort of struggling to find. And then just one note, I mean, for the defense, of course, also for Cerro, they were missing Patiño, who was suspended. And then they sold Arzamendia. He's just moved to Cadiz in La Liga. So they actually had a very young defense. You had Alexis Duarte, who I think is 21. You had Del Valle, who's 20. You had another defender who's just gone out my head, but he's 20 as well. And then you have Beto Espinola, of course, who's more experienced. But I mean, that's a very young back line to have 3 kids that are basically 20, 21 years old playing in a Libertadores knockout tie. So it was a big ask. It wasn't helping.
That's their fault, Ralph. That's their fault. They let go of Marcos Cáceres, who was 35 years old, who was the experienced center back that they could have had for this very important game. They let go of him. They didn't want him anymore.
It was surprising they let him go, knowing that Patiño was suspended for this game. He picked up the 3 yellow cards in the group stage, so they knew he was going to miss out. That was strange. Lucena, on the other hand, they didn't know, of course. The injury they couldn't be sure of. But I think, I mean, it's a big task for them now going into the second leg, and I think we spoke about this before, or we've talked about it on Twitter maybe, but Cerro have never overcome a Brazilian side over 2 legs in the Libertadores, and unfortunately I don't think that's going to change now.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think it's going to be a really tight task for these teams. And, like you said, Ralph, Fluminense just demonstrated how good they were, not just in the way that they have their talent, but also just being informed, even though they were missing a lot of players. And like to Fede's point as well, Cerro just couldn't find the replacements necessary. Okay, Arzamendi had moved like days before the game between Fluminense, but, you would think that you would probably have like a good replacement beforehand, but it just didn't work out. You didn't see the best of Carrascal. You didn't see the best of the captain Villasanti, obviously the strikers. I mean, Maria, I'll go to you on this one. And I'm sure all of us are in agreement. We could probably say it right now, unless they surprise us somehow. I don't see Cerro coming back from this, especially now going to Brazil and taking on a big team like Fluminense.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't see that either. I don't see that happening. They did get, I know we're going to speak about the VAR situation and CONMEBOL decision later on, but even if, I think even the only way that they could probably turn this game around is if they do get that rematch from that game and start from scratch. So maybe they have some time to readjust all those errors that you guys were talking about. But going to Brazil, it's going to be a tough game for Cerro, and I think it's not just in the international competitions, but I think it's one of the reasons too that I didn't pick them as my top 3, because I don't see them doing very well, and we saw them in the Apertura as well. They were kind of slipping down the hole, and it wasn't working out. Hopefully, they could replace a lot of their players. Arzamendi was a great asset for them. Unfortunately, well, fortunate for him, unfortunately they had to let him go. So hopefully they get some kind of replacements there. Look at the younger generations and hopefully find someone to replace him.
Definitely. I think that's kind of been the mentality and the formula that Cedro have done, using their academies. They obviously using players that come from there to play on the first team. And I think it's just something that they kind of have to do if they're not able to, spend the money necessary. But Fede, yeah, going back to what Maria said about this whole situation about VAR, obviously we saw them filing to CONMEBOL. This was something that I think the entire world was talking about, this whole VAR situation or lack of it. I mean, for something like this to be reversed seems very difficult. I don't see it happening. It would have to be a monumental error. And yes, it was an error per se, but in the history of what CONMEBOL have done, I don't see them changing this result unless you have some information otherwise over there in Paraguay.
Unless something really weird happens in these next couple of days, I don't think it will happen. I mean, what are we? It would be just too weird for rematch. I mean, this doesn't usually happen in football. I mean, if they do this now, they will have to do it in every single protest they get. I mean, VAR and the refs here in South America, we saw it during Copa America. The level is really low right now, and there's a big difference in what we saw from the European game and the way that we're seeing that the VAR is being treated here in South America. And we talked about this before in this show also. I was worried about the situation beforehand, and I thought with VAR it was going to be a little bit easier now because we didn't have VAR in the group stage. Remember that. I mean, VAR is coming in now to supposedly help out the refs, and it just made it even worse. But it's not about the technology, it's about the guys, right? It's about the human beings that are there controlling the stuff. I mean, how can you not look twice at that monitor? How is it that your second ref, your assistant that's sitting next to you doesn't tell you, no, you didn't see this? I mean, the way they work in there, it was really weird. I mean, from the process point of view, It was just not correct.
You just don't
and
see something like this
it's,
happen. You just don't see it.
Yeah, up until now, I mean, we hadn't seen a mistake this big. I mean, this was probably the biggest mess up in VAR history up until now. I mean, that's why you're talking about, Roberto, that this had like a international bounce. It was all around media that night and even the day after. And Cerro Porteño was in the middle, stuck in this situation. And I really do think that the team was affected by this situation at halftime. And it kind of showed at those first minutes in the second half where Fluminense just came right at them and took the game away from them.
Yeah, because it definitely affected them, because we heard Chiquiase say in the press conference after the game, he said, why were they taking so long to do this when we could see on our phones, on our cell phones, what had happened already? Because, those guys on the bench or the kind of directors that are allowed in the stadium, they were seeing everything in real time. We were seeing it on WhatsApp, right? In groups and that kind of thing. We could see they'd made a mistake. So surely in the dressing room at halftime, at least Chiquias and his staff, they knew it'd been a mistake, and maybe that was communicated to the players. But it was a huge error from process, like Fede says, because actually it starts with the assistant referee. The assistant referee shouldn't raise his flag at that point. You're meant to wait, let the play go on, kind of thing. And then, then you can go to VAR, and then it's that thing of just drawing the line from the wrong defender because they totally missed the defender that was there. We did have similar incidents happening very recently. Remember Paraguay against Uruguay in the World Cup qualifiers, there was a goal disallowed that Uruguay thought really shouldn't have been. And afterwards, in fact, they agreed they'd made a mistake. But maybe that was more a kind of, it was a mistake of how they interpreted the rules, maybe. It wasn't, such an obvious mistake of just, drawing the line in the wrong place, which is what's happened here, because they just didn't see the defender, which was, a very clear thing. And you also had Colombia had a big protest. I think it was also they were against Uruguay in Copa America. But, we had protests very recently against refereeing, and none of this ends in games being replayed. And it's not going to happen this year in any year because of the pandemic and the schedule we're in. They don't usually have time to replay games, and this year they have even less time. So that's not going to happen. The most Cerro could, I think, hope for, which is reasonable, is some kind of monetary compensation, because they're going to miss out if they don't go through $1.5 million, which is the next round of prize money. And it would be, in a kind of legal sense, it would be fair for them to say the loss of earnings is from kind of CONMEBOL's incompetence and negligence. So they're, almost like CONMEBOL should be fined. Usually they find the teams, but it could be the other way around. There could be, some kind of basis for that. I don't know. But replaying the game, I can't see happen.
You can't replay a game. You can't do a rematch for a stupid ref. I mean, this guy was just stupid. This guy was just dumb. I mean, what am I going to call this guy? This Chilean ref. I mean, he did a close-up and he totally forgot about a player.
Three people, right? Is your assistant referee, your VAR, and your AVAR. It's like three people made this mistake. It's incredible.
And all the screens in the world right in front of you, and you miss it. It's just, what's going on?
Well, I was going to say, I don't know if, I was thinking a little bit back. I don't know if it was one of our guests that we had this conversation with, but the situation with the teaching of the VAR in South America it's very minimal. It's kind of taken very lightly. So then obviously things like this are going to happen, and now something big like the Cerro game happens, and where is this all going to go? Where is this? Whose fault is it? It's CONMEBOL's, because they're not putting they're probably not putting the money, they're probably not putting the time for refs to get the training that they actually need, compared to refs in Europe that have quality training and much better, obviously much more money than CONMEBOL. But still, if you want to implement this kind of technology, you need to put the time and effort and the money to get the best results.
Certainly, and I think after what we saw, this kind of debacle. I think CONMEBOL and obviously the main FAs from all across South America have to really look and say, okay, we can't have an incident like this happen again. And nothing is perfect when it comes to VAR and obviously the interpretation of the rules, but at the same time, a big error like this should not be happening in a major competition like the Libertadores. So yeah, I agree, Maria. I think certainly they have to reevaluate the way that they're teaching their referees from all levels, assistants, VARs, and whatnot, and to really drill that in, even if it's not perfect when it comes into the main matches, but at least they avoid these errors that are going on that we saw in the Cerro game. So yeah, I think this is really going to change a lot. And I don't see a replay happening either. There's no time. A big error like this, like you said, Fede, who else? If it's not them, if it's going to be them, who else is going to get it?
But the only way you can get a rematch is if you can actually demonstrate that the guy did it on purpose. I mean, if you can demonstrate that the ref went into that VAR situation thinking, I'm going to mess these guys up, I'm going to screw these guys, then you can go after a replay. But there's no way of proving that. I mean,
there's no evidence whatsoever.
A dumb ref that didn't see something.
Absolutely. There's no evidence whatsoever that the referee wanted to go and interpret the game and wanting it to go against Cerro's favor. So you just got to go with what you have. And I do agree with that compensation thing that you'd mentioned, Rob. I think that might be a similar situation where, this kind of errors that CONMEBOL had made, they now have to pay Cerro Porteño back for what they did. So yeah, it's a weird situation. I'm curious to see how it's going to be demonstrated in the next few days from CONMEBOL, from Cerro, and just how this really big debacle is going to be solved. So we'll keep an eye on to that. And obviously let's switch gears to what we saw from the other team in the Copa Libertadores, who also disappointed. Unfortunately, it was Olimpia who had come back, taking on Internacional, obviously a team that they had faced in the group stage beforehand. They played over them para uno, ending 0-0. And Maria, going to you on this one, I think a result like this, similar to what we saw with Fluminense against Cerro, okay, they didn't concede any goals as well, but that kind of match that you needed to take advantage of, and Ortman just couldn't do it, and we couldn't see the best out of them in a game like this.
Yeah, it was a game, like you said, that they needed to win. It was at home, and they couldn't get it. They had a lot of chances in the games, but they were kind of it was very, I don't even have a word for it. It wasn't hidden. It was they were very slacking in the plays, and the plays were all everywhere. It was kind of messy, like a messy game for Olimpia. And I saw that Orteman spoke later in the press conference, and he, obviously he's gonna defend his team, but in his eyes, they did very well, and it was a good game for them. And it's like, no, you have to admit it wasn't a good game for them. You should have won. Obviously a draw 0-0, it's an advantage for them, because they can go to Brazil and get a good result and hopefully make it through. But it wasn't a good game for him or the team. And it was very messy. I think the only player that was very good was the goalie, the goalkeeper. He was amazing at all his plays and stopping all those plays from Internacional. So I think the only one that played very well was him. I believe it's Alfredo Aguilar. Yeah. You were gonna say,
Maria, this team beat you by 5 goals during the group stage, and you were able to maintain it 0-0 on the first leg. I mean, there's some good news in this. I mean, I think you're pretending too much. I think you're waiting too much out of this situation, and Olimpia barely made it here.
But they had all this time to practice, and they knew who they're gonna play against. So I think at least 1 or 2 goals would have been ideal for this team.
There were
in a competition like this.
There were only 4 international players that played in that 6-1. It's like a totally changed team. And I think, I mean, to to Maria's point, I think it was a very sloppy game. Like both teams were kind of misplacing passes, and Internacional is playing like a team that's on that form that they're in. They're now like 2 wins from 12 games. The manager's new, of course, as well. It's now Diego Aguirre from Uruguay because they got rid of Miguel Angel Ramirez. So I mean, there are a lot of changes, but I kind of also agree with Fede that I thought, Olimpia still getting a draw is not such a bad result because, this isn't a vintage Olimpia team either. This is like an Olimpia team that's been kind of growing into this and gradually getting better. And I thought, a positive for them was somebody like Pita, who, okay, he didn't score, but he looks much better than the Pita that we saw at the beginning of the Apertura that was just couldn't score anything and missing. He looks more confident. You had Delis Gonzalez coming back. I think Gonzalez is still maybe a little bit off the pace compared to the player we know, but he's going to be useful. And I really liked Salazar, the right back. I thought he had a good debut. He's just signed the Argentinian player, and I thought he was a very strong player and maybe something that they needed when Otálvaro, I've remembered these games seeing Otálvaro get caught out a lot. He's a very attacking fullback, but he gets caught out a lot. Salazar gave them a bit more defensive stability, I thought. So it's not a terrible result for Olimpia, but yeah, it's also going to be very hard to go to Brazil because, these Brazilian sides are much stronger at home as we know, and they might have some players back. Because, like I say, there were only 4 players that played in that 6-1 because they played the Grenal at the weekend, the big Clásico with Gremio. So I think they even rested some players because of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I don't think this team is working, Roberto, because that midfield is not working. I mean, I don't see what's going on there with Brian Ojeda. I mean, Ale Silva is not being in his top form. Jorge Recalde is not scoring lately either in this team. So there are some players that are just not working out individually. I don't think they're up to their best ability right now. I am happy with what I saw from 38-year-old Antolin Alcaraz, who was back there in defense when maybe a couple of games ago we thought that he wasn't going to start in this game, but the opportunity opened up and he really showed up. I mean, he was probably the best back there. Getting so many balls back for his team, crushing heads with it, like his style is. He's a very strong defender, and he uses his body to take everybody out of their comfort zone, and he just does it with such an elegance. And I really like what I saw from Antolin Alcaraz, the leadership in defense. I think that's going to be very important, obviously, in the game that's going to be played next week. And you're going to have to score in Brazil. But this team looks beatable. I mean, Inter is not the same team from the group stage. You can beat this team.
And obviously, certainly having the advantage of scoring the away goal will help them in that kind of series. Obviously, like you said, Fede, the fact that they can indeed track back and try to defend as much as they can after scoring if they do get that. So, yes, I do agree. I think there is a certain case of wanting to get the results, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough for them to get the result, but obviously, like you said, Ralph, even though it might not be the vintage Olimpia side, they are a side that are growing, and certainly, let's see what they do over the weekend in the Clausura. Obviously kicking off their season, maybe they can get some rest from some of the players that are not going to play that game, and that's going to be vital for the game against Inter. So I mean, it's not the same side like Fede said, but I think echoing what Maria said as well, I think because of not being able to get that beatable result, they should have gotten something over there, at least in Para Uno, to calm down the nerves heading into next weekend. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens from them, and obviously we'll shift gears to what's going on, at least on one positive side from a Paraguayan side, and that's from Libertad, and kind of the dream team, as we can say now in Paraguay, really. Obviously, the defending champions of the Apertura, now going into the Sudamericana, really straightening their players, getting a lot of players like Maidana, getting Marcelo Diaz, Lorenzo Melgarejo from Racing as well, coming back to Libertad. They've really gotten a really strong side, and they go all the way to Colombia to get a 4-3 win. Ralph, I mean, this was a really good result for obviously Daniel Ganero. obviously putting him in a good spot heading into the second leg now in Asuncion. But it was really the game of Hector Martinez. He was kind of a player that kind of got in there, got a few touches and got a few goals as well, but also from the youngsters, Julio Enciso, a player that we've talked about all year long, not just what we saw from Libertad, but also from the national team as well. He's kind of been raising his stock right now, and in games like this, it proves that he's up for big things in the future of his career.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to see him. He's starting this game up front with Cardoso, with Tacuara, and they play off each other very well. He protects him a lot on the pitch. He missed a very easy chance, if you remember, like a very easy chance that you thought he should have scored. But then when he gets his second chance in the second half, he puts it away. So I think that's, a nice sign of his kind of confidence and his strengths, of his mental strength. It was a strange game. I mean, this is the kind of game that Garnero always does in continental competition, and it doesn't work. But this time it worked, because if you remember, exactly 3 months before that game, they played Atlético Nacional in Medellin, and they lost 4-1. And I think it was a similar game in that sense. I mean, what happened this time is they managed to outscore the opposition, but it was intense. They were going, let's go past midfield, let's go down the flanks, let's just go toe to toe in high intensity. And it cost them at the beginning. They were losing. And then, Tito Villalba scores 2 goals, and one is thanks to defensive error. But the defensive error from Junior is because this is such an intense game. It was very high tempo, up and down, end to end, I should say. And then Junior go back, and it's 3-2, and he thought, okay, Garnero, he's made that mistake again. He's getting caught out. But then he just kept with it, and they got the goals, and it works in an away match because, of course, whether it was 1-0 or 4-3, it's the same kind of result for Libertad. They have the advantage, they have the extra, they have the away goal advantage. So I think it's a great result for them. And now let's see how they set up in the game against in the home game. So in the home leg, I think someone like Marcelo Diaz. Wow, what a good player! He hadn't played for I don't know how long, 8 months or something, and his technical ability is amazing. And I think he'll be a really useful player in these big games with the experience he has. He's won 2 Copa Americas. This guy knows what to do at the very top level. And then you have Cardoso, and Melgarejo is back, like you mentioned. He didn't play in this game, but Melgarejo and Cardoso played a Europa League final against Chelsea. I mean, these guys have huge experience. So I think what they have is a real team that can challenge. Now it's just to make sure they get that strategy right and keep pushing on. But they're in pole position to go through to the quarterfinals.
Absolutely. And Fede, I'll go to you on this one as well. Did you see that this Libertad side is convincing you enough? And Maria, I'll get to you on your opinion as well. Do you think that this Libertad side have enough to contend for the Sudamericana title? And it's weird to say that, given that, Paraguayan teams really aren't considered the favorites in big competitions like this. But the way that Libertad are straightening their teams, obviously coming off as league champions and getting results like this, you got to put them up as one of the favorites.
Yeah, of course you do. Just looking at the roster, I mean, just when this team left Libertadores, I said that this team has way too much roster, way too many good players for Sudamericana, and it kind of showed on this game. Any of these players can score, and they just have so much ability. And then you bring all this pedigree around. I mean, Marcelo Diaz, Rap was just saying, a champion all around. Camilo Mayada also in River, so many titles. I mean, you're bringing players that know how to play these games, and that they're not going to have any doubts into going into these kind of matches. My concern isn't that defense, just because of how many goals they conceded. I mean, what I see from the Uruguayan Alexis Barbosa is that he takes way too many risks, and he ends up making a lot of mistakes, and it kind of unbalances the team. Obviously, this team is a very offensive team because of his coach. I mean, they promised also the president that of the club that they will go after the Sudamericana. So you're expecting to see this from Libertad. They're going to go no matter what team goes is in front of them. They're going to go after the goal. And I think that was Garnero's message also from from the 11 that he picked. I mean, a very offensive, attacking team in that midfield also. Just because Marcelo Diaz, he's going to be the heart of this team, but you can't ask him at this stage of his career to go chasing after players. I mean, I think that's Hugo Martinez's job in that midfield, just because he's younger and I love what I saw from him also in that first half, and he even put an assist with a great pass that he can also make constantly in the games. And we're seeing a huge development. We're seeing a huge these players are evolving. These players are growing. I'm talking about Hugo Martinez and Julio Enciso, who you also mentioned, and it's probably a lot easier for them to grow and to go into the level that we're expecting they can go into with this surrounding, with all these great players around them. I think that's just great news also for the national team. And it's maybe also good news for the national team that we've finally seen the best version of Tito Villalba in Libertad. I mean, this is a player that was called up before to the national team. He's only 26 years old. He's probably in his prime of his career right now. Why not give him a call? I mean, we got to play now in September. He keeps it up like this. I mean, he might get a call from Berizzo. We lost Antonio Vareiro during the Copa America for an injury. He won't be back for the whole year. I mean, this is a player that has kind of that similar style that can give you that play, that game by the right side, by that right side where Antonio also played. I really like what I saw from Libertad. I mean, it was obviously the best performance from a Paraguayan team this week. And the thing with Libertad is probably that locker room. I mean, how are you going to have all the players together? They managed to work it out during the Apertura. You just got to bring players together and all working for the same goals, because you see some players that are probably not that happy. I saw Carlos Ferreira coming in very late in the game, and this was a striker that not long ago was the starting striker of the team. Ivan Franco, Blas Cáceres. I mean, all these guys are probably not comfortable, not getting all the game time they want, not being in the starting team, but you got to make them feel comfortable. That's part of the job that Garnero also has to do with this amazing all-star team that he has.
Definitely. And Maria, I'll go to you on this one because we made the predictions on how they can do in the league, but that's now the big challenge, how they're going to be able to tackle both these competitions.
Yeah, like I said, I think in my predictions, I said that they're going to make it second place. If not, I didn't say this in my predictions, but if not, they could make it again champions. Obviously, I want Olimpia to win for obvious reasons. But yeah, they do have a superstar team, like you said, Fede. They have they had amazing signings this time around, and I was going to mention as well Tito Villalba. He the moment that he went to Club Libertad from ATO, I believe, I just I thought that was great for him because he's definitely gotten more time playing. Not at the beginning, but towards like now. So and he ever since that he's been playing very well in the Apertura. He had a bunch of goals. I'm not sure how many, but this last game he had two goals and they were back to back pretty much. So I like this team. I think that they can make it far into this competition. Hopefully they can win it. I think that was your original question, Roberto, if they can win the Sudamericana. I think so. I think that they're capable of doing it, but like you said, they need to put all the effort that they can.
Definitely.
They would have Santos or Independiente next round if they get through. So it's not easy. It's not an easy tournament because you get the Libertadores people, but then I do think the Brazilian sides, when they drop into the Sudamericana, maybe don't take it quite as seriously because now now they have their own Brasileirão that's coming into kind of crunch time. So that could play in their favor. I mean, but they have the quality. I agree. They have the quality to go deep in the tournament. And I'm with Maria that I think Olimpia could win the title if Libertad go deep in Sudamericana and they kind of get distracted, but otherwise, Libertad really is the team to beat in the Clausura as well.
Absolutely. But Ralph, to your point, that's also the type of games that you need to win in order to demonstrate how, you want to win this competition. And I think that has been the ambition for, obviously, Libertad. Horacio Cartes obviously having a huge financial boom on this team, that kind of objective to win something outside of, Sudamericana, the leagues and the Copa Paraguay's. They want to get international glory. They want to do something that they've never done before. And so that's part of their plan. And what they've done over the last few weeks is to demonstrate that they do want this competition. They're taking it seriously, and they can prove it. But it's all about how they set up in these type of games. And they're gonna face adversity. They kind of faced that, trying to come back from their win against Junior. But I think they are really honestly focusing on winning this competition, and they're doing everything they can to straighten as best as they can to get to that goal essentially and win the Sudamericana. So it'll be interesting to see what happens from that. It'll be interesting to see what happens from the likes of Olimpia and Cerro, who have huge mountains to climb next week. And obviously with the Clausura starting, we'll definitely be focusing on what's been going on over there. So I think this is the perfect time to close off another great episode of Guarani Vision. Thank you to all that have listened. And, for myself, Roberto Rojas, for Fede Perez, Maria Britos, and Ralph Hanna, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Guarani Vision. See you soon.